not talking about the car today, but I'm in it. I had a situation the other day and reminded me of something I see on the road a lot. And I saw this in a pawn shop, but some things are just kind of universal. And that's having an honest discourse with somebody when all they want to do is win the argument. And I got to thinking, you know, this is why you just can't take things personally these days. I'm sorry about the drone. The car is a little loud. But I sat there and it came from the voice of experience of something that I'd done. And, you know, and the thing was, it was nothing big. But this guy just lost his collective crap because he had to be right. It was personal to him. So, let me tell you what happened. In a nutshell, before I did YouTube and all that, and what my original plans for YouTube were until they changed all the rules, was I was actually into firearms quite heavily. I was trying to start my own business so I could get out of trucking, building a lot of stuff. I've built a lot of firearms, doing just mainly manufacture and retail. And when doing that, you have to get used to the laws and the regulations and stuff, because when you get a federal firearms license, you just have to know these things, because the government is very unforgiving about things of this nature. So we were talking about a particular firearm. It was nothing big, and I said, you know, there hasn't been, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And this guy, he wanted to argue with me. And I said, no, this is why, X, Y, and Z. That was all that needed to be said. So the minute I see him grab his pocket computer and start getting Google, I know stupidity is about to happen. You know, and I think that wasn't the part that bothered me, but this next thing was. The part that bothered me was he was so eager to prove me wrong, which he did not, that he had to come from a place of authority because it had become personal to him. And as me and Red are on the other side of the pawn shop, I can hear him bitching and moaning to his boss about how wrong I am and this and this and this and this. And I'm like, I haven't even left the shop. If you have a problem, bring me a solid argument and let me respond. He did not. He took it personally and just bitched to anybody who would hear. And I guess maybe I took that a little personally too, because that was very insulting. You have a problem with me, not that guy. Come to me. I'm still in the shop. But this kind of attitude is something that I've been seeing all over the board, and truck driving, I've been seeing it a lot. Everything has become personal. Now, you won't believe how many guys I run across on a weekly basis who believe that every slight they get from dispatch is a personal attack. Really? These guys have 60 and 70 people they're dealing with, and they're going to single you out? If you make their life hard, they're going to have to move on. They're going to have to deal with things they can control, not an unreasonable ass who's sitting there yelling at them. A lot of times when they get these crap loads, it's to get you gone so they can deal with people who are actually eager to do what they need to be done. Trust me, I've been in that situation. You know, it's not personal. They don't have the time for that. You know, and I'm seeing just everything has become so emotional based and personal that people have started becoming really hard to deal with. We're out here headed to town today. I'm going to go find me some lunch, but boy, I'm sure happy to have the car going. Probably the last time I'm going to take it out this year, and probably not going to have it out till at least April or March. Hopefully as early as March, but it's getting cold. This is probably going to be the warmest day of the week before winter really shows up. So, got the car home and tucked away. It's warm. I don't have to have a coat today. But, you know, a lot of this taking it personally, a lot of the road rage you see is just that. Back when I owned my pink truck, you wouldn't believe how many guys could not handle being passed by that truck. It was stupid, you know. I pass them and they would literally just kick their own butt trying to get around me. They could not handle windy. They could not handle me passing them. I mean, it came down to simple, stupid things like that. Maintain your speed and let me drive out of your life. Nope, wasn't going to happen. There's a difference between reacting and responding. If you react to something, most of the time it's just going to be negative. You can't react to everything. There's no point. A reaction is an emotional response to something that you probably don't have a whole lot of control over. But responding is evaluating the situation and acting accordingly. That's the difference. Sometimes you just have to take the approach that there's just so many things you can't do anything about. Give myself a Coke. And understand that and realize that as mad as you want to get and as mad as you want to be, I've been there, there's nothing you can do. And yelling and arguing with people, especially shippers and receivers, will not get them to work any faster. I've noticed, especially since COVID came back, it just seems like all the people that they've chosen to fill their the good help didn't come back. They went out and found better jobs. They were smart enough to realize that there was going to be a vacuum and they needed to jump in on it, and now they're the bosses. So, but what I'm noticing is that, especially like with furniture hauling and things of that nature, you're just not getting people to work. And it makes people mad. I mean, you're at a disadvantage and this and that. But this is why you can't get mad. You go in there and start yelling at the gal at the desk, there's nothing she can do. And there's nothing that she's going to do. She sees 100 of you a day. And I've talked about this before. You know, there's an order to doing things. And sometimes the only thing you can do is just shut up and go back to your truck and wait. Now, there is times when, you know, you have to go in and, you know, question a few things, and I've done that. We all have. But there's an order and a chain of command and kind of steps you have to take. But getting mad and yelling and screaming at somebody who doesn't care isn't going to accomplish anything. And sometimes you do have to be the bigger man. A while back, I had a Landstar driver try to vent his rage and frustration on me. Brake checking me, cutting me off, this, that. It was completely stupid. And, you know, I suppose we could have both handled it a little better, but, you know, I was just doing my thing, and I was just holding him up. It was just personal to him, and he was holding me up. Well, he sat there and cut me off and brake checked me and all that, and I had it all on film. And I was fairly angry. I was going to sit there and send it to Landstar. And then I had a thought, you know, maybe he's just mad. Maybe he's having a bad day. I don't know what's going on in his life. But there was one thing that I knew, that if I sent that video to Landstar, he would get fired immediately. Landstar doesn't play with things like that. If every Landstar driver I've ever talked to, Landstar takes that very seriously. They would pull him in a minute and he'd be gone. So I had to ask myself, am I sending the video in because it's the right thing to do, or am I sending the video in because I want him to get in trouble? You know, I decided that I need to just get off the road, let him get quite a ways ahead of me and all that, and let him drive out of my life. You know, sometimes you have to think about things like that, because actions do have consequences, and I'm not out to get anybody fired. Now, if he, you know, came to a complete stop and tried to fight me or something like that, yeah, then we would have had a different story. But
simple stupidity, an emotional based response because he's mad and I'm holding him up, or so he thought. No, there's no reason to get anybody to get fired over that. And truly, I thought if he's really that bad of a driver, he's not going to be around much longer anyways, which is pretty much par for the course. A lot of guys wash out of this fairly early. This is a hard business to really get broke into. Yeah, you can. It's easy to get into. It's hard to stay in. And, that's why there's a lot of guys in their first, second, and third year. And there's a lot of guys in their 10, 15, and 20 year, but there's not a whole lot of guys in between. So sometimes you just have to sit back and evaluate the situation and realize that, no, we just need to remove ourselves from this. Guys just sit there and just make things so much harder than it has to be because their reaction to a situation is wrong. I sat there and watched a prime driver try to blindside into a spot because he wasn't willing to go literally 12 yards, do a loop, and come back to where it wasn't a blindside. And mind you, there was 4 open spaces there. So I just whipped in, backed in, and he just sat there and struggled and struggled and struggled and struggled and struggled. And to back into a 3-spot hole at that point because, well, I got better things to do. And I was unhooked, hooked to my empty, and rolling out of the place, and he was still trying to get back into the spot. Taking it personal, being prideful, and being lazy like that, he didn't save any time. His attitude was wrong. He just thought that he could do it, and if he could, great. If he couldn't, there's no shame. And just, I guess what I'm saying is when you take things personally and you try to, take a shortcut and do things of that nature, it's counterproductive. I guess that's kind of what this video is about. There's so many things out there that are counterproductive because guys just don't want to take the time to do them right. They take things personally, and it ends up costing them more times. A lot of times it ends up costing them their job. It ends up costing them loads. It just ends up costing. And is this a price that you're willing to pay? You have to ask yourself those questions. There's a lot of talk about how the professionalism is out of this industry and blah, 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 blah. And then they turn around and they end up being the most unprofessional people you see. And being professional is a lot of times just comes down to minding your own business, letting the chips fall where they are, and leaving people alone to their own devices. Like I said, there's an order to things, and the universe pretty well will sort itself out. Where we get in trouble is we want it to sort out on our time frame. We want to see it. And I think that's where a lot of people get in trouble. They're so eager to get somebody in trouble because they were slighted and took it personally that they're willing to basically sacrifice themselves in order to get, well, what they think is respect or just, I have no idea what they think it is. But like I said, it's an emotional response to something that's far out of their control. People are going to act stupid whether you like it or not. You just kind of have to face the fact that no matter where you go, no matter what you do, and no matter what situation you're in, as everyone who's ever been on the internet knows, stupidity is everywhere. Ignorance is everywhere. Laziness is everywhere. How you respond to that's going to really help you in the long run. When you have a good, solid attitude and you don't let these things bother you, things tend to go a lot easier. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things you need to address. But in the grand scheme of things, that's a shorter list than most people realize. The reason I bring that up is because everybody you meet is going to have a first impression of you. And how you tackle a situation is going to say a lot to everybody around you. You have to put on a good show. I mean, I'm not saying you have to live your life as a fraud, but at the same time, first impressions do mean a lot. And if you get the reputation of someone who's hard to deal with, what am I looking for? Yeah, I'll find it. I'll do that. If you get the reputation of somebody who's hard to deal with, they are going to treat you accordingly. And even if that's not who you are, rebuilding a first impression can be done, but it takes a long, long time. And when you start dealing with people, especially people you work with, your attitude and character is what's going to determine a lot of things. Like I said earlier, if you sit there and get all bent out of shape over things that nobody has any real control over, they're going to treat you accordingly. Is it fair? I don't know. But I do know it's preventable. And that's kind of what I've been seeing. A lot of what these guys are getting in trouble for these days and getting mad at, and what's causing them a lot of problems, they're just victims of their own circumstance. They are writing their own ticket. And one thing I know is that whether you like it or not, these are people that you need. You need these people. You need customers. You need dispatch. You need brokers. You need all of these people. And your first impression is going to say a lot about how they deal with you. Now, I know some of these people are like, well, they shouldn't have done this and they shouldn't have done that. And part of the problem with thinking that way is that a lot of these people are concentrated on the way things are supposed to be, not how things are. And those are two vastly different things. So even if you know how things are supposed to even if you know how things are supposed to be, you still have to recognize how they are. And once you recognize that, you can start building a plan around that. You need these people, and you need them to respect you. Respect is something that's earned. You don't go in demanding it. You know, if you go in demanding respect and have an emotional response and gets upset and at every slight, that's, people living in fear of you is not respect. That's resentment. And they're just going to do whatever they can not to deal with you. So if you have a good positive attitude and let a lot of things just go, I mean, like I said, so much of this you can't do anything about. I can't do anything about the guy at the gas station with a bad attitude. I can't do anything about that dispatcher who, gave me a load I didn't want. You can air it, say, hey, you got anything else or this or that? There's very few loads I turned down. Now, don't get me wrong, there are loads I turned down, and they know this. And consequently, I'm not offered them anymore. But it's one of those things that takes time, and you have to build trust. Now, in situations like road rage and stuff like that, you do have to be the bigger man sometime, and sometimes you have to back off, get off the road. Sometimes you have to call the police. Sometimes you just have to let them go and not worry about it. Chances are you'll never see them again, and that's not a bad thing. If anybody's ever watched Another 48 or the first 48, you're going to see time after time after time of people making one stupid decision that's going to dictate the rest of their lives. It's a very real thing. This is why I talked about responding, not reacting. These are people that got emotional and reacted. They didn't understand how the world works. They thought their whole scope and sphere is just within their own head. Don't let a lapse of judgment dictate the next 5 years, or 7 to 10, depending on the parole board. You have to exercise good judgment. You have to let things go. You have to not take things personally. It's not personal out here. That guy at the pawn shop, I could have taken it very personally. I could have gone over and said, hey, dude, this ain't cool. I don't care. The only reason I brought that story up was just because there for a moment it did get me. And it got me thinking about that, and it led me to this video. This is something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. Sometimes you just have to let the world go by and leave people alone to their own devices. And when you do things like that and you concentrate on what you're doing and not what anybody else is doing, if it's not harmful and it's not affecting you, let it go, man. It's just not worth it. We're all out here, especially in the trucking world, trying to do the same thing. We're all in this together. The general public doesn't differentiate. A truck driver is a truck driver is a truck driver. They don't care where you work, what you're hauling. All they know is that you're big, bulky, and you're in their way. You know, everybody, you can't let their actions anger you. You know, if anybody's driven down south or Missouri, you'll see that all the time. People just cut you off. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about them. This wasn't personal. You were just in their way. So a lot of times you just can't get angry and you just got to let things go because, well, it's not worth building stress long after the situation is over and never realizing that you had no control over this situation to begin with. I guess that's it for this video. It was just something that was on my mind. Guys, watch yourselves. Take care of yourselves. You don't need the stress. You know, just do what you're supposed to be doing. Mind your business. And don't take things personally. And I guarantee you, you're going to have a much more enjoyable experience, not only on the road, but in life. So, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. You guys be safe out there. We'll see you next video.